In the vast shimmering halls of the Temple of Continuance on Zalthai Prime, Queen Velixi stood motionless before the obsidian wall where the names of the fallen were etched in luminous script. The chamber was silent save for the soft hum of the eternal lamps that floated like captive stars. 15 years had passed since the war with the Correct Dominion had torn her world apart, and in that time, the names of her daughters, Kale and LRA, had been replaced by respectful blanks, as tradition demanded for those presumed lost forever. But Velixi had refused the final rite. She came here every dawn, tracing the empty spaces with trembling fingers, whispering their names as if the sound alone could summon them back from the abyss. Her advisors pleaded with her to accept reality, to let the scribes complete the inscription and allow the kingdom to mourn properly. She answered always with the same iron certainty, "They are not dead." The words had become her armor, her crown heavier with each passing cycle. Velixi was tall even among her people, her skin the deep indigo of twilight seas, her ears sweeping upward in elegant points adorned with silver threads that caught the light like falling comets. Her eyes, once bright with laughter, now held the weight of galaxies. The palace had been a place of joy once, filled with the twins' voices as they chased glowing orbs through the gardens. Kale, the elder by mere minutes, had been bold and inquisitive, always climbing the crystal spires to see farther. LRA, quieter, had possessed an uncanny gift for machines, coaxing broken drones back to life with gentle touches. On the day the Karake fleet descended, the palace had burned. Velixi had pressed her daughters into an escape pod, sealing the blast doors as explosions rocked the foundations. She had watched the pod vanish into the black, a single spark against the inferno, before the shockwave threw her back. When she awoke, the war was over, her world scarred, and her children gone. Scouts searched for years. Nothing. The official record declared them lost to the void. Velixi never believed it. Far across the galaxy, in the rust-choked fringes of the Sarasso expanse, Cass Rourke was having a considerably less regal morning. His ship, Jellybean, an egg-shaped freighter patched together from salvage and sheer stubbornness, had stalled mid-hyperspace jump. The culprit, as usual, was Cass himself. He knelt in the cramped engineering bay, wrestling a half-eaten burrito wrapper from the intake fan while cursing in 3 languages. "Synthetic cheese should be illegal," he muttered, yanking the offending foil free. Jellybean's eye, a sarcastic orb of light hovering near his shoulder, chimed in cheerfully. "Also cornstarch, questionable meat product, and approximately 2 cups of existential despair. Shall I list the nutritional deficiencies next?" Cass groaned and climbed back into the cockpit, wiping grease from his hands onto his already stained jumpsuit. He was human, average height, average build, with the kind of face that blended into crowds useful for a man who made his living hauling cargo through territories most avoided. His hair was perpetually messy, his eyes sharp despite the perpetual squint from staring at scanner readouts too long. He queued up his favorite 22nd century synth-funk playlist to drown out Jellybean's commentary, but before the first beat dropped, a faint ping interrupted. A distress signal, old and weak, flickering on the comms panel. Cass frowned and leaned closer. The code was ancient, formal, in Zouthian royal dialect. Echo Irani unit requests shelter, designation royal. He whistled low. That protocol hasn't been active since, what, the Karak War? Jellybean sobered instantly. Correct, Zouthian royal emergency beacon. Last used over a decade ago. Coordinates lead to Verley 9, deep in the dead zone. Nothing intelligent goes there and returns. Cass stared at the blinking dot on the nav map. Verley 9 was a graveyard world, atmosphere barely breathable, riddled with radiation pockets and rumors of worse things. Smart pilots avoided it. Cass wasn't particularly smart when curiosity bit. "Plot the course," he said. Jellybean hesitated. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. If it's a royal distress call, someone might pay for the salvage. Or at least owe me a favor," the AI sighed electronically. "Or we die horribly, but fine." Jumping in 3, 2. They emerged from hyperspace with a lurch, Jellybean's engines whining in protest. Verley 9 hung below them, a mottled green-brown marble wrapped in swirling toxic clouds. Bioluminescent storms flickered across its surface like veins of lightning trapped under skin. Cass suited up, checked his sidearm, and descended in the shuttle. The landing was rough. Jellybean complained the whole way down, but he touched down near a cluster of jagged rock formations that looked suspiciously artificial. He stepped out into air that tasted of metal and ozone. The forest around him pulsed with life, leaves that glowed in shifting patterns, vines that moved like curious fingers. He hadn't gone 50 paces before a plasma bolt scorched the ground at his feet. Cass froze, hands raised. "Friendly, I come in peace." "I have snacks." Two figures detached from the shadows. The first was tall, female, Zalthian by the ears, and the regal bearing despite the scars and patched armor. She held a spear fashioned from salvaged array crystal and bone, its tip humming with residual energy. The second was shorter, cloaked in what looked like star tiger fur, eyes wide and wary. Twins, Cass realized instantly. Kale and LRA, though he didn't know their names yet. "Identify yourself," the taller one snapped, voice low and dangerous. Cass kept his hands up. "Cass Rourke, independent pilot. I fix things, haul cargo, and apparently answer decade-old distress calls. You folks the ones broadcasting?" The shorter one tilted her head, studying him. "Human," she said softly, as if tasting the word. Kale stepped forward, spear still leveled. "How did you find us?" "Old beacon, royal code." "I was in the neighborhood." He offered a cautious grin. "Got granola bars if you're hungry." They didn't lower their weapons immediately, but after a tense standoff, LRA reached out and took one of the bars. She bit into it, eyes widening. "Peanut butter," she whispered, as if it were a secret password to another life. Kale finally relaxed a fraction. "You can stay for now. But move wrong, and you're fertilizer." They led him to their shelter, a sturdy dome pieced together from ship plating, solar collectors, and ingenuity. Inside, an AI interface flickered to life on a makeshift console. "Is this creature a pet?" it asked in a dry tone. "Guest," Cass corrected, already eyeing the fried Comes array. "Name's Snippety, I take it?" the AI huffed. "Snippety Snap, actually." Sarcasm module fully operational. Over the next hours, Cass worked. He repaired their long-range comms, traced the signal's origin, and listened as the twins reluctantly told fragments of their story. Escape pod crash-landed here after years adrift. Survived on wits, scavenged tech, and sheer refusal to die. The beacon had been LRA's last hope, a modified lullaby their mother once sang, broadcast on a loop in the faint hope someone royal would hear. When Cass played back a clean segment, LRA's face crumpled. "Mother's song." Kale's fists clenched. "She's alive?" Cass nodded slowly. "Signal's fresh enough. Origin point is Serac Theta, edge of old Carrick space. If we move fast," he didn't finish. The twins exchanged a look that spoke volumes, hope warring with terror. As night fell on Verley 9, the bioluminescent forest sang around them. Cass sat outside the dome, staring at the stars. Jellybean orbited above, keeping watch. He thought of his own past lost family, bad choices, the endless road of running from one job to the next. Something about these two, fierce and broken, and still fighting, tugged at him. He wasn't a hero. Never claimed to be. But sometimes, the universe dropped a loose thread, and all it took was someone stubborn enough to pull. Dawn broke in streaks of violet. Kale and LRA emerged, packs ready. "We're going," Kale said. Cass stood. "Then let's go get your mom." They boarded Jellybean together, the ship grumbling but compliant. As they broke orbit, Cass glanced back at the glowing world below. A chapter closing, another opening. The void waited, full of dangers and possibilities. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel quite so empty. The interior of Jellybean smelled like burnt wiring, recycled air, and the faint sweetness of the peanut butter granola bars Cass had distributed like peace offerings. The cockpit lights were dimmed to conserve power, casting long shadows across the instrument panels where three very different beings now shared the cramped space. Cale sat rigid in the co-pilot's seat, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the starfield streaking past the viewport, as though sheer willpower could make the ship move faster. LRA occupied the jump seat behind them, knees drawn up, fingers dancing over a salvage datapad she had connected to Jellybean's auxiliary systems. She was already rewriting subroutines, coaxing extra efficiency from the aging engines. Cass kept one hand on the yoke, the other absently tapping the rhythm of an old Earth jazz standard against his thigh. The silence between them was thick, not hostile, but heavy with unspoken questions. After an hour of hyperspace travel, Cale finally spoke. "You don't ask many questions." Her voice carried the clipped precision of someone who had spent years rationing words. Cass shrugged without taking his eyes off the nav display. "Figured you'd tell me what you wanted me to know. The rest is your business." LRA glanced up from her screen. "Most people would demand payment. Or proof we're who we say we are." Cass gave a small, crooked smile. "I've hauled worse cargo than royalty, and honestly, the beacon pinned on a royal frequency. That's proof enough for me. Plus, I've seen the way you hold that spear. I'm not dumb enough to argue lineage with someone who can probably skewer me before I blink." Cale's lips twitched, almost a smile, gone in an instant. "We were children when the palace fell. The pod's nav core was damaged in the launch. It took us years to limp from system to system, scavenging fuel and parts. We learned to hide. Learned what species would shoot first and what ones might trade. Verley 9 was supposed to be a temporary stop. Then the long-range comms failed completely, and we were stuck broadcasting the lullaby on hope alone." LRA's voice was softer, almost dreamy. "Mother used to sing it when we couldn't sleep. She said the notes were coded coordinates from the old royal migration routes, useless to enemies, sacred to us." Cass nodded slowly. "Smart. Poetic, too. Most distress signals just scream, 'Help,' yours sings." The conversation lulled again as Jellybean dropped out of hyperspace for a scheduled nav check. A debris field loomed ahead, twisted remnants of warships from the last skirmishes of the Karate conflict. Mangled hull plates drifted like broken teeth, some still sparking with residual power. Cass eased the throttle back, threading the ship through gaps barely wide enough for the hull. "Stay strapped in," he murmured. "This junk's got attitude." Cale leaned forward, studying the wreckage. "Karak raiders," she said quietly. "I remember their silhouette from the attack. Black hulls, red running lights. Like blood on obsidian." One of the larger hulks rotated slowly, revealing a gaping wound where its bridge used to be. LRA's fingers froze on her datapad. That was the command ship that fired on the palace spire. I recognized the dorsal array. Her voice cracked on the last word. Cass didn't push. He simply adjusted course, giving the derelict a wider berth. When they cleared the field, he spoke again, tone deliberately light. "You two ever think about what happens when we get there? If we get there?" Cale's jaw tightened. "We walk in. We say, 'Hello, Mother.' We're home. Then we see what 15 years does to people." LRA looked at her sister, then at Cass. "And you? What do you get out of this? Credits? A royal commendation? A story to tell in spacer bars?" Cass chuckled. "Maybe all three, maybe none. Truth is, I've spent most of my adult life running from one edge of the galaxy to the other. Never had much of a destination. Helping two kids find their mom feels useful, for once." They jumped again, longer this time. Hours stretched into cycles. Jellybean's galley was tiny, but Cass managed to heat up packets of protein paste and mix it with the last of his hot sauce stash. The twins ate cautiously at first, then with growing hunger. LRA discovered she liked the burn. Cale preferred it plain. They traded small stories, Cass about smuggling runs gone sideways, the twins about nights spent hiding in asteroid caves, while pirate bands hunted salvage. Trust built slowly, brick by careful brick. On the third jump, trouble found them. The proximity alarm shrieked just as they emerged near the edge of Sarak Theta's outer marker buoys. 3 angular ships, sleek, predatory, bearing the faded but unmistakable crimson striping of correct remnant vessels, were already vectoring toward them. Scavengers, Cass muttered. Or worse. Jellybean's shields flickered to life, weak but present. Kale was already moving toward the rear turret access. I can man the gun. Al-Ara shook her head. No, they'll expect that. We need to talk first. Cass raised an eyebrow. Talk? With Carrick raiders? Al-Ara's eyes were steady. I've been listening to their chatter for years. They still use the old command cipher. I can crack it. She patched into the array faster than Cass could protest. Moments later, a harsh guttural voice filled the cockpit. Unidentified vessel. State registry and cargo manifest or be considered hostile salvage. LRA keyed the return channel, voice calm and regal despite the patched jumpsuit and grease-streaked face. This is Crown Princess LRA of Sci-Fi, aboard the independent freighter Jellybean. We are transiting to Sarak Theta under royal imperative. Stand down or face the consequences of obstructing a member of the royal house. A long silence followed. Then laughter, cold, metallic. The princesses died 15 cycles ago. Nice try, scavenger. Prepare to be boarded. Kale's hand went to the spear leaning against the bulkhead. Cass held up a palm. Easy, let's see how far bluffing gets us. He opened a channel. This is Cass Rourke, captain of record. I've got 2 passengers who say otherwise. Care to scan our biosignatures before you start shooting? Might save you a war crime charge. Another pause. Then the lead ship's weapons powered down fractionally. Transmit signatures. 1 wrong move and we ventilate you. LRA sent the data burst. Minutes crawled by. When the response came, the voice was quieter, almost uncertain. Genetic match confirmed. Zalfian royal lineage. How? Cass leaned into the mic. Long story. Shorter version. They're alive, they're here, and they're going home. You want to be the guys who shot at the descent to Zalfay Prime was quieter than any of them had imagined. Jellybean slipped through the orbital defense grid with the ease of a ship bearing royal transponder's clearance codes. LRA had quietly updated from the palace archives she still remembered by heart. No interceptors scrambled. No warning shots. Only the soft chime of docking permission and the gentle pull of planetary gravity guiding them toward the sprawling landing field beside the rebuilt palace complex. Cass kept his hands steady on the controls, but his knuckles were white. He had flown into war zones, asteroid storms, pirate ambushes. None of it had ever felt like this, like stepping onto a stage where the audience already knew the ending, and he was the unexpected extra who might ruin the finale. The twins stood behind him now, shoulder to shoulder, watching the planet swell in the viewport. Kale's breathing was measured, deliberate, the way a fighter steadies herself before a bout. LRA's fingers switched against her sides, tracing invisible circuits only she could see. Neither spoke. There were no rehearsed speeches, no practiced lines. Everything they needed to say had been carried in silence for 15 years. Cass glanced at the rear monitor, saw their reflections superimposed over the turquoise curve of their homeworld, and felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Pride, maybe, or envy. He had never had a place to come back to that still waited. They touched down with a soft hiss of landing struts. The ramp lowered into warm, jasmine-scented air. A reception line waited, not the full ceremonial guard Cass had half expected, but a small cluster of figures in flowing silver and violet robes. At their center stood Queen Velixi. She had not aged the way humans did. Zalfian lifespan stretched long and graceful. Yet the years had carved new lines around her eyes, deepened the indigo of her skin to something closer to midnight. Her silver-threaded ears trembled faintly as the ramp settled. She took 1 step forward, then another, until she was standing alone at the foot of the ramp. Kale and LRA descended first. They moved in perfect unison, the way only twins who had survived everything together could. 10 paces from their mother they stopped. Velixi's gaze traveled over them, taking in the patched armor, the scars, the lean strength that had replaced childhood softness. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then Laura lifted her hand, palm up, in the old royal greeting. "We kept your song," she said simply. Kale mirrored the gesture. "And we brought it back." Velixi closed the distance in 3 strides. She did not embrace them immediately. Instead she reached out, fingertips brushing first Kale's cheek, then LRA's, as though testing the reality of skin and warmth. When her hands found no illusion, no trick of light, the dam broke. She pulled them both into her arms with a force that belied her regal bearing. A sound escaped her, not quite a sob, more like the release of a breath held for a decade and a half. The gathered courtiers bowed their heads. Somewhere distant, temple bells began to toll in slow, joyful peals. Cass remained at the top of the ramp, awkward in his grease-stained jumpsuit, feeling suddenly like an intruder. He shifted his weight, debating whether to slip back inside Jellybean and wait for someone to remember he existed. Then Velixi lifted her head, still holding her daughters, and looked directly at him. Her eyes bright again, wet with unshed tears, found his. "You," she said, voice carrying across the landing field like clear water over stone. "You brought them home." Cass rubbed the back of his neck. "Technically, they brought themselves. I just provided the ride." He offered a small lopsided grin. "And maybe a few granola bars." Velixi released her daughters gently and walked up the ramp. The twins followed a step behind. When she reached him, she stopped, studying his face with the same careful intensity she had used on them. "You answered a beacon that had been silent for years. You crossed dead zones. You faced remnant raiders. And you asked for nothing." She placed a hand over her heart, then extended it palm up in the same gesture her daughters had used. "Sci-Fi does not forget debts." Cass hesitated, then mirrored the gesture. "No debt, Your Majesty. Just glad it worked out." She inclined her head. "Come, both of you." She turned, one arm around each daughter's shoulders, and led the way toward the palace gates. Cass followed, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes. The courtiers parted like water. Whispers followed in their wake: speculation, awe, curiosity. A human spacer in the Queen's company was unprecedented. Inside the palace, time seemed to fold. The halls still bore faint scorch marks from the old attack, now softened by new tapestries and living vines trained along the walls. Bioluminescent orbs drifted overhead, casting shifting patterns of violet and gold. Servants moved silently, bringing trays of chilled nectar and spiced fruit. Velixi guided them to a private garden chamber overlooking the sea. A low table waited, set for 4. No attendants, no ceremony. Just family and one unexpected guest. They sat on cushions around the table. For a long moment no one spoke, then Kale broke the silence. "We thought you were dead too, at first." The pod's sensors picked up palace shields failing. "We saw the spire collapse." Velixi nodded slowly. "I was thrown clear, buried under rubble for 3 days. When I woke, the war was over. The Karak had withdrawn. And you were gone." She looked between them. "I never stopped searching. Even when the council urged me to declare you lost. Even when the scribes prepared the final inscription." LRA reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "We heard rumors sometimes. Traitors spoke of a queen who refused to mourn. We kept hoping." Kale's voice was rougher. "We survived because we refused to believe you were gone either." Velixi's gaze drifted to Cass. "And you found them on Verley 9. It wasn't a question. How?" Cass shrugged. "Bad jump. Good timing. Distress beacon pinged while I was fixing my galley fan. Could have ignored it. Didn't." He took a sip of the nectar sweet, faintly floral, and added, "They were doing fine without me. Tougher than most spacers I know. I just gave them a faster ride." Velixi studied him a moment longer. "Humility does not suit you, Cass Rourke. but gratitude does. She turned back to her daughters. Tell me everything. Leave nothing out. They did. Hours passed. Stories spilled like water, long-damned crashed escape pods, hostile worlds, nights spent hiding from slavers, the slow mastery of scavenged tech, the lullaby broadcast on fading power. Velixi listened without interruption, only occasionally reaching to touch their hands, their hair, as though reassuring herself they were real. When they spoke of the Karek remnant ships that had shadowed them to the border, her expression darkened. They will answer for what was done. Not with war, we have had enough of that, but with memory. The archives will record their names. They will live knowing the daughters they thought dead returned. Cass listened quietly, content to stay on the edge of the circle. But when LRA mentioned how he had talked the raiders down with bluff and bioscan, Velixi's gaze returned to him. You spoke for them, risked your ship. Your life. Seemed like the thing to do, he said simply. Night fell over the sea. Bioluminescent waves rolled in glowing sequence below the balcony. Velixi rose, drawing her daughters up with her. Rest tonight. Tomorrow the court will want to see you. There will be ceremonies, proclamations, questions. She smiled, a real one, soft and tired and radiant. But tonight is ours. She turned to Cass. You will stay as our guest. As long as you wish. Jellybean will be refitted in our yard's new drives, fresh plating, whatever she needs. And you, she paused. You will always have a place here, should you choose it. Cass opened his mouth, closed it again. I'm not really the palace type, he managed finally. Velixi's smile deepened. Neither were they when they left. Yet here they are. She placed a hand briefly on his shoulder. Think on it, no pressure. Only thanks. The twins hugged their mother again, lingering this time. Then they looked at Cass. Kale spoke first. You're not leaving yet, right? LRA added, quieter. We still owe you 6 repairs on that ridiculous ship. Cass laughed despite himself. Jellybean's feelings are easily hurt. I'll stick around a while. Make sure she doesn't embarrass me in front of royalty. Velixi led them inside. Servants appeared with soft robes and quiet directions to guest quarters. Cass was shown to a chamber overlooking the same sea, bed larger than his entire cockpit. He stood at the balcony a long time, listening to the waves, watching the lights of the city shimmer. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the itch to run. Behind him, in the palace heart, a queen sat between her daughters, singing the old lullaby, not as a distress call now, but as a homecoming. The notes drifted on the night air, carried out over the glowing sea, and somewhere far above, Jellybean hung in orbit, patient and quiet, waiting for whatever came next. Morning light poured through the high crystal arches of the palace, turning the marble floors into pools of liquid gold. Cass woke slowly, disoriented by the softness of the bed, the absence of engine hum, the gentle scent of sea air instead of recycled oxygen. For a moment he thought he was still dreaming, then the events of the previous day crashed back. The landing, the reunion, the Queen's quiet offer of sanctuary. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and stared at the unfamiliar ceiling. No alarms. No jump coordinates blinking. Just quiet. It felt wrong. Comfortable, but wrong. He dressed in the simple tunic and trousers left for him, soft fabric, deep violet trim, and stepped onto the balcony. Below, the capital city stirred to life. Hover vehicles traced graceful arcs between spires. Market stalls unfurled glowing awnings. Children chased luminous orbs across garden plazas. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. This was the world the twins had fought to return to. This was what they had carried inside them through every dark night on Verley 9. A soft chime sounded at the door. LRA entered without waiting for an answer, already dressed in flowing silver robes that somehow still managed to look practical on her. You're awake. Good. Mother wants us in the council hall soon. There's a lot to decide. She hesitated, studying him. You look like you're planning an escape vector already. Cass gave a half smile. Old habits, where's Kale? Training grounds. She needed to move. Too much sitting makes her twitchy. Alara crossed to the balcony rail beside him. "Thank you again. For yesterday. For everything," he shrugged. "Told you. No debt." She shook her head. "There is. Not when you can pay off with credits or favors. The kind that changes trajectories." They walked together through corridors alive with quiet activity. Servants bowed as they passed. Courtiers whispered. Cass felt every gaze like a weight. When they reached the council hall, the great double doors parted to reveal a long table of polished obsidian. Queen Velixi sat at the head, flanked by advisors in formal robes. Kale already stood at her right, arms crossed, posture straight as a blade. She gave Cass a small nod acknowledgement, not warmth, but enough. Velixi rose as they entered. "Cass Rourke, please, join us." He took the empty seat to her left, feeling absurdly out of place among the silver-threaded nobility. The Queen's voice carried calm authority. "The return of my daughters is no small thing. The Council has debated through the night. Tradition demands proclamation, celebration, restoration of titles. But there are also questions of security, of precedent, of what comes next for Zalthai after so long believing the line broken." An older advisor, ears heavy with ceremonial rings, spoke first. "The princesses must be presented to the people today. The temple bells have already begun the sequence of joy. Delay risks unrest," another added. "And the human, his presence raises complications. No outsider has stood so close to the throne since before the war." Velixi's gaze never wavered. "He is not an outsider. He is the reason my daughters breathe this air again. Speak plainly, what troubles you?" The advisor cleared his throat. "Perception, alliance, the correct remnants still watch our borders. If word spreads that a human pilot delivered the heirs, some will see weakness, others opportunity." Kale's voice cut in, sharp. He faced down 3 raider ships with nothing but words and a bluff. "If that's weakness, I'd like more of it." LRA leaned forward. "He repaired our beacon when it should have been scrap. He flew through dead zones most wouldn't touch. If we owe anyone trust, it's him." Velixi raised a hand for silence. "Enough, Cass, speak. You have earned the right." Every eye turned to him. He swallowed, suddenly aware of how dry his mouth was. "I'm no politician. I haul freight. Fix what's broken. I don't know your laws or your history. But I know this. Your daughters survived because they never stopped believing you were out there. And you never stopped believing in them. That's not politics. That's family. If letting me stand here for a day helps remind people what family can survive, fine. If it makes trouble, I'll be gone before lunch." Jelly beans fueled and ready. A ripple of murmurs circled the table. Velixi studied him a long moment. Then she smiled small, genuine. "You will stand with us today. Not as petitioner, not as servant, as friend. The rest we will answer as it comes." The ceremony began at midday in the Grand Plaza. Thousands gathered, citizens in festival colors, children on shoulders, elders leaning on carved canes. Temple singers filled the air with rising harmonies. When the palace gates opened and Velixi appeared with Kale and LRA at her sides, the crowd's roar shook the crystal spires. Cass walked a respectful step behind, feeling every decibel in his ribs. The Queen raised her hands. Silence fell like a curtain. "People of Zalthai," she began, voice amplified by hidden arrays, carrying to every corner of the city. 15 cycles ago our world burned, our future was stolen. Today it returns. She drew Kale and LRA forward. "These are my daughters. Kale, firstborn. LRA, secondborn. They lived. They endured. They came home." Another wave of sound joy, disbelief, tears. Velixi continued. "They did not return alone. A stranger answered their call when no one else could. A human pilot named Cass Rourke crossed void and danger to bring them to us. Let it be known. Debt is owed. Honor is given. He stands among us not as guest, but as kin by choice." She turned, extended a hand. Cass stepped forward on instinct. She placed his palm against hers in the royal clasp. The crowd erupted again, this time with something new layered in. Curiosity, respect, a few uncertain notes, but mostly acceptance. Velixi spoke lower, for him alone. You may leave whenever you wish, or stay. The choice is yours. But know this, Zalthai remembers. The rest of the day blurred feasts, music, children presenting glowing flowers, elders offering quiet blessings. Kale sparred with young guards in a friendly exhibition, laughing in a way Cass had never heard before. LRA wandered among engineers, already deep in discussion about retrofitting Jellybean with Zalthian crystal drives. Cass drifted through it all, accepting offered cups of nectar, answering the same questions a dozen times. Yes, he was human. Yes, he found them by accident. No, he didn't expect anything. As dusk painted the sky in violet streaks, he slipped away to the landing field. Jellybean sat quiet under floodlights, hull patched and gleaming with fresh plating courtesy of the royal yards. He ran a hand along her flank. You clean up nice, old girl. The IS orb flickered to life near the ramp. Flattery will not erase the memory of that burrito wrapper incident, Cass chuckled. Missed you too. Footsteps approached. Kale and LRA walked up together, now in simpler tunics, hair loose. Kale spoke first. You're leaving, not a question. Cass shrugged. Thought.
Pero no he visto cosplay de Rem, tampoco.
Una hora formado.
Sí. Son las 11:41, güey. Ponle que entramos a las 12, güey. 12:30. Fácil, güey. Siempre a las 12:30. Me voy a traer una, güey. A la verga, qué buen cosplay. ¿Cómo se llama ese anime, güey? ¿Cómo se llama ese anime, güey? Bueno, es como una caricatura, vaya. Pero no me acuerdo cómo se llama, güey. Es un... Ese, güey. Es un anime, güey, una caricatura.
No veo goticas culonas.
Ahorita que entremos, güey. The light, the light. The light, güey.
La de rojo dices.
¿Cómo que la de rojo? O sea, es un hotel, pero está en el infierno el hotel, güey. Ya todo le llaman gótico. ¿Cómo? Pero está cabrón, güey. ¿Cuánto tiempo le toman para hacer un cosplay, No como un pendejo que compró su traje de Made en Amazon y nomás se lo puso. Mira una perrona.
Haz mi pelo o algo así.
Esa mamá, esa madre, güey.
Está linda de chica del frente.
Eso no se dice, verga. No digas mamadas. Un Goku color humilde también, güey, ahí. Otro Eevee.
Pero ellos se dedican a eso, usan sus cosplays en diferentes convenciones.
Pues sí, pero está chido.
They will check you under the skin.
You think? I don't think so. But they're going to take their time checking the backpack. I swear to you, they're going to take their time. Les apuesto, güey, se van a tardar un chingo en checar la mochila, güey. Te apuesto, güey, te apuesto lo que quieras.
Güey, ¿a quién le querías enseñar tu outfit?
¿A quién le quería enseñar tu outfit? ¿A nadie, güey? ¿Por qué?
Lo bueno que la fila avanza rápido.
Pues ni tan rápido, güey. Nadie que conozca así aquí en...
No mames, avanza muy lenta la fila.
Sí, güey, es lo que digo. O sea, nadie así que...
Preguntaste hace rato por alguien.
¿Por quién? Se me olvidó.
Más adelante te vas a asolear mi pedo.
Sí, güey.
Por otro streamer.
Ah, por el Rider. El Rider de Córdoba. Quería que me viera divina. Para rato viene el vato a lo mejor.
Ya está conectado.
Nah, pues déjalo, anda chambeando el vato, ¿no?
Llegas agüita.
No. No, se me olvidó. Se me olvidó. Tuya, cabrón. Oye, los huevotes de ese vato. ¿Cuánto quieres perder que un agua va a valer $5 aquí adentro, güey?
¿Te compraras algo de alguien?
Sí, posiblemente. Pero no me voy a comprar la figurita que quiero. Eso sí no voy a comprar. Sí, no me voy a comprar esa madre, vale verga.
Tírate un chiste en lo mientras.
No me sé chistes, güey. Cuéntame uno, güey. Cuéntame uno.
Bababa QLO si no.
Va. Ah, sí, la figurita, güey. Tengo una figurita, güey, que siempre he querido y nunca he comprado, güey. La Ren Maga Diablo, algo así, una maga con disfraz de diablo, una putada así, güey. Esa figurita la quiero, pero cuando vaya a Japón, güey. Esa es mi de esta para ir a Japón, güey, supone, según yo. No, güey, va a topar esto, güey.